Hi there. Welcome to another presentation of the Globe Sound Healing Conference. Now we have Daniel Barber. Hi, Daniel.
Hey David, how you doing?
Good. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Daniel has been a social worker, social scientist, video producer, political activist, band leader, and improvisational actor and musician. In his work at I Am Sound, he helps people who are feeling stuck, out of tune, and uncertain to inhabit their authentic creative selves on piano and elsewhere in life, in the midst of it all.
In the midst of it all.
Midst.
In the
Yeah,
midst of it all.
yeah, yeah. What have you been up to lately?
Oh my gosh, David, it's just so many things that are happening as with all of us in life these days. And I think the thing that's been most interesting to me is just noticing my own relationship with myself, in the midst of it all, and really enjoying the process of growing and learning and appreciating, finding new ways to appreciate things. And it's just been fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and be in this conversation with you. It's a real honor. Really appreciate it.
Nice. It's so nice to have you here.
Thanks.
Okay, so we got the big question, and that is if you had all the money in the world, what would you do to help people on the planet?
I just love that question, and the first thing that popped into my mind was that I would buy everybody a piano.
Got to buy
Uh,
them a house to put it into.
well, that's true. Maybe just buy them a little add-on, living room for the. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably my deepest dream is that if everybody had easy access to an instrument that they could express themselves on fully, and that would just be, I think that would just change everything.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so tell us about your presentation and our discussion today.
Well, so what I thought that I might do today, I know that there's probably a lot of people that are going to be listening to this that are sound healers and people who are interested in sound healing, have been studying it, have been doing it, have been practicing it, have been enjoying it for themselves. And so what I thought I would do today is to go into a little bit about the power of sound and the power of improv, and why I think that the piano is a particularly powerful instrument for sound healing, both for other people, for clients, and for ourselves. And so I'll just talk a little bit about why I got into this, and then sort of go into a little bit more of the perspective that I bring to it.
Hmm. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, let's begin.
All right, all right. So I have a presentation here that I will start with just to give folks an overview. And so, are you seeing that there?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So overall, my the framework is that there's a couple of different ways that we generally relate with the world. And the first thing that we do is that we perceive it. We pay attention to what's going on around us. So this sort of have one section here on perceiving, and then the next thing that we do is that we make contact with the world somehow. We move, we interact, we engage with other, and then we can come back and we have this opportunity to reflect and pay attention to a past experience that we can then sort of roll into how we perceive going forward. And so what I'd like to do is to go today into this first area about how we perceive and the power of our perspective and what that is essentially. And in my work in general, the first step is to just realize that your perspective is unique and it's legit and it's essential, and by that I mean that not only is it unique from the standpoint of your experience, it's unique in the universe. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. And it's legit. Your perspective is yours. It's totally legit. A lot of times we have a sense of uncertainty and feeling like we're kind of out of sync with things. But whatever it is that we're experiencing is a legit experience. And the reason that I say that it's essential is because it seems to me that if we are going to actually have a more, as accurate a picture of reality as possible, then we need to hear from as many different perspectives as possible. Because my view of reality is going to be incomplete by nature. And so if I want to really navigate reality effectively, I need to be able to hear from as many different eyes on the situation as possible. And so we need to be able to communicate that effectively with each other. And so this can help. This approach, and this particular module in my course is sort of about this. But I'm just going to give this to you today. But it's helpful for when we're distracted, when we're feeling disconnected, and when we find ourselves chained and too attached to old beliefs and habits. When we struggle with our self-talk, when we struggle with our all the stuff that's going on, the committees in our brains, and when we're overwhelmed with uncertainty. And we're wondering, we know, I think a lot of the people who are going to be watching this participating in this conference are awake enough, we're sort of aware enough that being present is a really valuable thing. But knowing that is one thing, and really being present in the moment is another, as we know. And so how can we learn to listen more carefully? How can we learn to pay attention more fully in each moment? And how can we relate more with what we're actually hearing? And in my work, I encourage people to really pay attention to what it is that they discover along the way when they're playing. What are the insights that they notice? What are the ahas, and what are the things that they learn as they're playing and exploring? Because those little ideas and those little things that come to us can be super valuable, not only when we're playing, but in other areas of our lives too. So it's really helpful to just pay attention to when things come through. So we're just going to lean into a little bit more about this idea about your perspective being legit, unique, legit, and essential. So just to say a little bit about myself, I first got into this particular part of my work about 23 or 4 years ago. I had been a social worker. I was a quantitative statistician and research methodologist. I've always had a real passion to try to figure out how we can get from where we are now to where we most want to be. How can we get from being in an unhealthy state in society to a healthier state in society? And how can we be in a healthier relationship with the physical environment and with each other? I've always wondered how we get from here to there. And so I social work and quantitative stat, and then I got into video production. I did videos for nonprofits for quite a few years, and then I was a political activist. I worked on campaign finance reform a lot in the 90s, and then in 2000 my second marriage dissolved. And long story short, I really kind of hit bottom. It was like everything I had tried to do in my life, I had good intentions, but when that second marriage dissolved, I really was faced with the fact that things weren't working in the way that I had always envisioned. I may be the only one that's happened to, but I kind of doubt it. And what happened for me was that I realized that if I was going to heal the world, I really have to heal myself, and then really did a deep dive. And what I did for a while there was I realized that the only place that I could find solace was at the piano. I had played when I was a kid. I was pretty good. I was classically trained, so I had some chops, and I could read pretty well, but I was never able to improvise. But I would just sit down at the piano and I would just play my feelings, and sometimes my feelings were really kind of gnarly and kind of not pretty, but I would just come to the piano and I would do that, and it would be a lot louder and uglier than that. But there was a sense of reassurance, and there was a sense that I really had the experience at the piano that the experience that I was having was legit, that it was something that the universe could hear, it was something that the piano could hear, and it could reflect back to me. And so it was a way for the part of me that felt lonely and abandoned to have the experience that there was some other out there that could hear me. And that was profoundly reassuring. And that process proceeded and eventually really sort of developed all of this, but it came from a place of real kind of lostness, being really deeply lost. So my prayer in this work is that this can be a salve for other people who may be lost or stuck and unable to move forward in ways that they would love to, and that the piano can be an ally and a friend and supporter in that process. And so part of this work, part of this play work, is about learning how to create. It's about learning how to be step from our kind of habitual selves and automated selves into our creative selves, our generative selves. So this question about what are you called to, what pulls you, what draws you, is I think a really interesting approach to take to life in general. So in this presentation, this next few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about why we get stuck and that there is a path through. We're going to look at what I call the essential skill for your genuine liberation. I love this little GIF. He says, "Hold on, guys. We're not sure what this device is capable of. Maybe we should wait until we've had more time to study it." And he says, No, we don't have time for that. It's time to ask it a question." And so that's, it's time to ask a question. And I think I came up with this a couple of, 3 or 4 years ago now, that I think there are 3 foundational questions that all living beings deal with. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about what I call the Holy Trinity of Improv as a way to approach that. We're going to talk about why sound. I think a lot of you know the answers or note a lot of answers to that question, why sound. And I'll talk a little bit about piano improvisation, why those things can make a big difference. In fact, can make all the difference. Sorry about that. So this is just an overview of the structure of my program. We saw the perceive and contact and reflect earlier, and those are just some of the different modules that are involved. There's always an awareness tool in each of the sort of the sessions that I do, and there's also a musical tool that helps to express something about that awareness tool. I have various tools for assessing the extent to which you're connected to your creative source energy, that I call the 5-point alignment. There's another tool called the 7-step tune-up that's about tuning ourselves back to our creative juju in a way that's systematic and predictable and reliable. And so let's get into looking at the essential skill. I think that the single most valuable skill you can possibly learn is to navigate the unknown masterfully. And when we, let's see here. When we don't do this well, we become victims of our circumstances and our past, and we fall prey to old habits and generational patterns, beliefs, and strategies that were formed long before in another time. And we get frustrated and confused when things don't seem to flow very well. And if this continues unaddressed, it can lead to boredom and dissatisfaction, discouragement, and regret. On the other hand, navigating the unknown skillfully plants you deeply in the blessings of living, and you resonate naturally with the gifts of love and grace. Like that. So consider the roots of reality. At root, we're faced with navigating our lot in life as best we can. And this quote expresses something that's really deeply vital about all this, that in our struggle for freedom, truth is the only weapon we really possess. The search for truth about the nature of the reality that we are doing our best to navigate is essential. It's really critical that we are as accurate about the actual nature of reality as possible. Well, clearly, we're at a unique moment in human history right now, and it's not only for reasons that you may be thinking about. There's so many different reasons we can realize that we're at a unique moment in history. But from a larger sort of zoomed out perspective, it's really only in the last 100 years or so that we've learned that as far as we know, in terms of the truth of our situation, reality consists of energy and matter trading places with each other probabilistically. I mean, it's just really, really hyper weird. And no matter how highly sophisticated our methods, the future and reality and life is still unpredictable and persistently unknowable. Even if you just look at the proportions of matter to dark matter, the vast majority of mass in the universe is dark matter. So if you want to live well, the most essential skill you could possibly learn is to navigate this unknown, this unknowability masterfully. And when we start to apply this skill, we access parts of our brains that we don't usually tap, and possibilities show up that normally don't occur to us. And we start having more moments of being pleasantly surprised and having this sense that life is smiling on us and that we're kind of in a groove and we can get into a flow and we can get into a sense that, all right, I'm moving along with the flow of life, and that's a blissful experience. That's a joyful experience, and it's something that it's worth shooting for. How can we do that more often and more reliably and more regularly? So let's jump back into this. This is one of the things I noticed that Bruce Lipton is going to be. Is that right, David? That Bruce Lipton's going to be in this conference?
Yep. We're going to talk about belief systems and how it messes up your life.
That is so great. So I wasn't aware of this when I started doing this, but this is one of the things that has been a part of my kind of teaching for many years. Years ago, I was working out. I was listening to one of his podcasts, and I learned this from him, which is that the thing that makes us unique is literally from a cellular biological standpoint. The thing that actually makes us unique from each other biologically is the way that we perceive the world. And when he said that, and he goes into some detail about the protein receptors around the outside of cell walls and stuff, and that's the only part of the cell that's actually unique between us. There's DNA and stuff like that too, but I'm not going to get into that because maybe he can talk about that some. But the conclusion that he draws is that the way that we perceive the world is the thing that makes you, David, unique from me. That's the thing that makes you unique as a being, a living being in the universe, is the way that you perceive your environment. I find that really pulls a lot of things together in my mind in terms of, it's not my name, it's not my social role. I was a sociologist, and so, I know that most of the stuff that's going on in our minds is learned. It came from somewhere else, so that's not unique. And but the way that I perceive the physical reality and the way that I perceive reality is unique to me. And that somehow is embedded in what my essential gift is to the world. So it's kind of mind-bending and also pretty fascinating. Let's see here. Let's fix this thing. So we have quantum mechanics suggesting that uncertainty is a basic feature of reality, and then biology telling us that your perception of that reality is what makes you unique among all living things. Okay, so then how can you adapt and function and get all our various needs met for security and connection and fulfillment, knowing that each thing you know always leads to a whole bunch of other things you don't? And how can you share and benefit from your perspective and your unique and precious gifts so that you can make the difference in the world that you most want to make? How do you go where you know you want to go when you know you don't know what you don't know? How do you go where you know you want to go when you know you don't know what you don't know? How do you go where you know you want to go when you know you don't know what you don't know? And what's sound and piano got to do with it? Well, when the terrain is this weird, it helps to have a compass that keeps bringing us back to three foundational questions that can ground us as we go. The first question is, what is happening now? So you can imagine that from the first time we're ever sort of launched out into physicality, it's like, whoa, what's going on? What's happening? What is this? Where am I? What's happening? Is there a tiger coming? Is there a squirrel I need to chase? It's like, what is going on? And the second question is, who am I now? Who am I in the midst of this? What is my existence in the midst of everything? Who am I now? And then the third question is, what do I do now? Do I run from the tiger? Do I go get a peanut butter sandwich? Do I sign up for grad school? Do I marry this person? Do I walk outside and do I take a nap? There's always another decision to make, and it's always informed by what's happening now and who we perceive ourselves to be in any given moment. And so the Holy Trinity of improv is a way to help us address those fundamental questions that all living things, not only humans, but all single-celled organisms also address more and less consciously. What's happening now? Who am I now? What do I do now? And so this Holy Trinity helps us to focus and simplify and be more present so that we can be clear and resourceful and authentic regardless of the situation. And so part one of this Holy Trinity addresses this what is happening now question, and it suggests that we listen. We just listen really carefully. Pay attention. Listening carefully is first, and we must always come back to it. And like each of the others in the Trinity, this is much easier said than done. Part two of the Holy Trinity addresses the who am I now question by feeling deeply. So we pay attention to the body, the emotions, the psyche and spirit, and we notice whatever is presenting itself to our attention. Who am I now? And then part three addresses the what do I do now question by playing it out. And we draw from the vast array of options of how to express ourselves. There's a ton of stuff that's going through our minds all the time. And we have lots of options for what we could play. Even just from the super simplistic narrowing of what notes do I play on this piano. It's like there's still a ton of options. And so we have to make some discerning. We have to step into a shift between being completely passive and noticing what's happening, but then also to initiate something, make decisions, and implement them. And then once we play something, then you're back to listening. Now we've changed something. We've changed our environment by changing it, by playing a sound. So we're back to listening again, and the cycle continues. So this Holy Trinity is surprisingly powerful for helping you play more musically. And for what it's worth, this particular way that I teach makes it super easy to actually engage and interact with the piano that doesn't involve the typical kinds of theory. There's no chords, there's no theory, there's not even any note names in the approach that I take to the piano. So it becomes really possible very easily to just step right in and start playing. And then when you start to apply this on the piano as a practice, navigating the unknowns of improvisation with mastery, then it just becomes a tool that you can use to renegotiate your relationship with the present moment and renegotiate your relationship with sound and the stuff that goes on in your mind and so on. And I just wanted to share real quickly, many of you may know Chloe Goodchild. I worked with her for a while, and she is an amazing teacher herself and really is kind of a soul sister in terms of this work and in terms of the way that she approaches her vocal improvisation work is very similar to the way that I approach my work on piano. And she said that it was refreshing to be able to observe the piano keys in an entirely new way. She said it's like a completely new map of consciousness, as if you're walking through nature. And she said it gave her the confidence. She said, described this as a very accessible and simple and empowering way of teaching the piano, which is an orchestral instrument, as she described it. Wanted to play a couple of things for you.
And, at times I would, my mind would want to sound good, but then I would surprise myself with a note that I did not intend, and to just be surprised and, okay, where do I go from here?
Once I would settle in, how quickly my awareness of wow, there is stuff that's on my radar. There are things in my heart that I'm not paying attention to. And just how quickly those things would come to fruition.
So then just to hear you approaching the piano like, a planet you'd never actually walked upon before, gave me the confidence, because you came in with this very accessible, apparently very simple, very empowering way of teaching the piano, which is like the most, it's an orchestral instrument. It's like the entire orchestra is in there.
I sit with really beautiful people and I just play, and I'm not worried about missing a note.
Your music and your teaching technique evidently has opened a creative outlet in him that I have experienced hearing. And so I'm very, very happy for him, and I like what I'm hearing. So if I'm busy working or whatever I'm doing, he doesn't even bother to ask anymore, do you mind if I practice? Because he knows I always say, no, I like it.
That's great.
And that's been my experience.
How is that different from how it might have been when you first started this work?
A lot more accepting and much gentler, and a lot more trust in my process of unfolding.
And obviously the improvising is the way into it. That understanding is the improvising takes you there. It's just sort of the improvising. Every note within an improvisation is a doorway into a deeper state of consciousness. The kind of liberation that brings, because we've been brought up to believe you mustn't get it wrong. You mustn't be seen to be doing something that is out of order with the status quo, etc. And therefore, that's embarrassing, or all that crap.
So this brings it right to the surface.
It does. It's an unconscious. It brings it's a really, I would say it's a very fast way into the unconscious mind. If you really let it go there, let yourself go there. So then you've got to be aware that anything is possible and life will never be the same again.
And hallelujah.
And thank God for that, right?
It's natural. I don't have to struggle to find it. It is now part of my way, and it's guiding, the way I interact in life.
I'll stop there. But I think that should give an overall sense of this. So that's the basic idea, David.
Okay. I've got a lot of comments and thoughts and questions and discussion here.
Good.
So first of all, when you were talking about navigating the unknown, this is, I think, a really big deal. Because, I know even these days, if I've got something I have to do that I know it's not a no-brainer, where I actually have to figure it out, I actually kind of have a little resistance toward it. And also what I do, I actually make sure that I'm in the right energy to be able to actually do it. Whereas other times, maybe it's time to just do no-brainer, data entry, right? And so So
Yeah.
it's really important. And one thing you said is um, to search for the truth. But there's one thing that popped in my mind when you said that. And number one is to get to a place of peace before you do it,
Hmm.
so that you aren't in anxiety approaching that. You are like, okay, well, I've got this thing I got to deal with. Maybe I need to go play the piano, play a crystal bowl, take a bath, go on a hike. Maybe I need to get to a place of peace before where I'm really in a much better space to actually dive into the unknown.
Hmm. Yeah.
But but there's a whole higher level. And it's really a tricky one. I don't exactly have it down, but I've made headway. And that is when you realize that the unknown is the coolest thing there is. Right? That it's a blast. And not only a
Yeah.
blast, I mean, as you mentioned, it's really good for your brain. It creates new neural pathways. And it really, once you do it more and more, you get more comfortable with doing it. Although as we get older, then it's like, maybe don't want to do it, right? But but so you kind of start backtracking a little bit. But the whole trick is to reframe it as, oh my God, I can't wait. And
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a bummer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's such a good insight because so much of the challenge with that we have with the whole unknown is our resistance to it. It's like, it's kind of scary because you don't know what's there, and so it's a little bit harder to easily step into it unless we can develop enough experience doing it that we can remember that, oh yeah, this has been really fun when I've done this. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, and it can be insightful and I can find things out about it, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like playtime.
Yeah. It can be a very logical process of unwinding something, though, right? And some people go, okay, this is going to be fun. Whereas really, you need to engage the left brain and go, okay, is it this, or this? Okay, no, it's that. So I'm going to go, is it then this, or this under that? Right? So there's a process where you have to be disciplined in a way. But then there's the other aspect that happens when you're an alpha, where it's like, bing, and there's the answer, right? Which doesn't happen all the time, but that's really cool when you get the answer that's way more detailed than you could have figured out.
Yeah, and it's that dance I think that's really the interesting thing, isn't it? Because it's like we can't really turn our minds off, and we wouldn't want to. And so this navigation of how do we and that holy trinity of improv is literally moment to moment to moment. Listen, feel, play. 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 It's like it's being fully open and available, and also fully engaged and fully present, and making decisions, and at least having the experience that we're making decisions, and being open to like what's the note that wants to be played here, and I have the experience that I'm deciding to play this note there. Whether that's actually true, whether that's my brain making that decision, or whether that's some greater force that's just moving through me that made that decision, and I have the experience of making the decision, that's an interesting kind of question. But to be able to be open to and to just be willing to let go of control, at least enough that I can have an experience that I didn't necessarily manufacture on my own.
Yeah. My whole thing is, the hierarchy of vibration, which is the whole world is frequencies, timbres, which is a combination of frequencies, musical intervals, relationships of frequencies, and flow, musical flow, which is
Mm-hmm.
melodic and rhythmic flow. And
Uh-huh.
flow is the whole deal. And really, that's the whole deal here is smooth flow without stress.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because this my first thought is the number one thing that gets you there is exactly what you said multiple times now is you can't do it wrong. You can't do it wrong. And that's the number one thing to do because it's really I heard this thing on NPR, I think it was a long time ago, and they were talking about the second that they started writing down music, it really screwed up a lot of people. It's cool. It's got its cool components, right? Of course, it's great, right? We wouldn't have all the classical music we can, from back then.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and it's what you referred to, is it created the beginning of we got to get it right.
Yeah.
And we got to get it right is so it's so interesting to how it has messed up the world. Like I say, even in singing or making sound at all. I mean, so many people are scared to make sound because they may not get it right.
Yeah.
They may sing out of tune. And
Yeah.
like I always tell people, go find that person that told you you can't sing and kick them in the knee.
I think you're really on to a really big part of why we have such a difficult relationship with sound and music, David, is that thing, because what happened with it, and I've wondered why we teach music the way we do, and I think what you said is the reason is because somebody was really good at playing something, and people thought, wow, I'd love to hear that again. And so they started figuring out ways to replicate something because nobody could replicate Beethoven. And so, they had to figure out and they didn't have tape recorders. So they had to figure out some way of recording it so they could hear it again, which is legit. I mean, it's understandable. But then this external standard got created. So what is to be played is something that is determined. It was created by somebody else. The standard is set by somebody else. The teaching is by somebody else. Everything is an external standard, and it's different from me. And so the whole teaching is, how can I learn how to not be myself? And how can I learn to parrot something else? And like you said, no wonder we're messed up is because we think it's actually a bad thing to be connected to our own innate preferences and our own innate capabilities.
Right. I'm not creative.
I'm not creative. I'm not a musician. I don't have a musical bone in my body.
Right. It was that we created a whole sound program for the kids, and we went into the classroom with the 6 to 12-year-olds, and the 3 to 6-year-olds were ready to make sound completely. Right. But the 6 to 12-year-olds, this one girl immediately, she goes, there's only 2 people in here that are good at that can sing or that are good at music. And I go, can you go, ooh? And she goes, ooh. And can you go, ooh? And she goes, ooh. Can you go, ooh, ooh, ooh? And she goes, ooh, ooh. Look, you're doing it. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people that say I don't have rhythm, and I'll say like, can you walk across the room?
Yeah, or a lot of people don't realize that you totally sing perfectly in pitch every time you talk.
Yep.
Right, we're all singing really and almost everybody is perfectly in tune when they talk.
And they're saying exactly what they want to say, exactly how they want to say it.
Right. Well, not always. Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's right. I mean, we are singing all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right. I had this one woman in class or in open house. She goes, I really don't know anything about music at all.
She just wrote a song.
Right.
That's funny.
Right.
That's really funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so there's one other thing as far as the unknown that I learned only really got down a few years ago. And it's major. It's changed my life as far as flow. And that is it's all taken care of.
Hmm.
When I finally got that it's all taken care of, whether I'm going to have a relationship, whether my business or job's going to do well, whether as far as health, everything, it's all taken care of. And then you completely relax into the flow, and then the flow starts coming to you.
Mm. That's a huge, a big idea. I'd love to bounce off that just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Um, in my work in healing, and I've done a lot of my own personal work and a bunch of shamanic work and a bunch of like improv theater and psychodynamic kinds of processes, deep shadow work kind of stuff. And one of the things that I sort of add to that conversation that you just brought up is that sometimes it really doesn't feel to us like things are worked out, right? The experience that I'm having doesn't, it's like really hard for me to be convinced that things are working out. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, the ways that I approach that with my work on piano is to allow for people to just play what they're experiencing right now, whatever it is. And so it's kind of like I mentioned earlier when I was in grief, you know, it's just like sometimes I just want to hear that. And the value of that in my experience is that it's like it's the universe giving you permission to feel exactly what you're feeling, whatever it is, you know. And that's part of part of the working out.
What if what you're feeling is really bad and it's killing you?
Well, I think, here's how I think of that, is that it's much better to get it out of my body.
Yeah.
Like to move it out, to express it, to get it out of my body so that some of the energy now is outside of my body. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
yeah. No,
and
that's
so,
the whole
so
thing. Feel where you're at so you can then change it.
Yeah. And so for example, you know, I might be really angry and I might just sit there and do that, and I can do that for maybe 10 minutes or something, and I'm just like banging it out like I'm just banging on a heavy bag or something, and just moving that energy helps it to get out of my bones, gets it out of my body, it's expressed, and I also have the experience that the piano was able to take it. I didn't hurt the piano, right? I didn't hurt the universe by being, you know, who I am right now. And then my experience in that is that once I do that for a few minutes and I really let it through, there's a point to where it sort of feels like, okay, that's enough. Like I don't need to keep doing that. God. And then it can start to move in the direction that we want it to go.
I got to tell you my story. So, you know, I was in the symphony and played clarinet in high school. I was in the marching band. I was like #1 in the state of Tennessee on bass clarinet. And so I was really, you know, into getting the notes right. And now it's so funny. I play guitar now. Got a guitar with my name on it, Gibson, right?
Ding, 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 ding.
And I never, ever play normal songs anymore. It's only improvised and it's only my feelings, ever.
Cool.
That's all I ever do. And I just was had a class in our advanced program on working with anger and other emotions as well. And we were talking about what's the best way to express anger safely or you know, in a healthy way. Yeah. There's nothing better than a dissonant chord on the guitar or keyboard or anything. It's like, and bang, right? And
very satisfying. It's very satisfying.
Incredibly, and it's perfect. It doesn't hurt anybody. It gets it out, and it's kind of fun. It sounds good. Yeah. It's nothing better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that we haven't mentioned is that sound, and I know you know this thoroughly, but sound connects. Sound is a bridge. And so it not only connects us to each other, but it connects us to different parts of ourselves. There's this alchemy that happens when we are able to connect the part of us that's feeling angry with the part of us that's listening to the world, the part of us that doesn't want to be angry to the parts that, want to be loving. It's like it connects all these things together and reconfigures those relationships.
There's one other part that actually is kind of the opposite of what I said about, it's all taken care of, which you alluded to as well here. And that is to, and I'm almost done with a book on relationships, on loving relationships. And the 80% of the book is about being whole on your own and being healthy yourself, right? And so the thing is to examine what you do and see where you need to change without feeling bad about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really tricky because most people, they examine and they go, I suck. I suck.
Yeah.
And that pattern keeps going, I suck. Instead of going, okay, there it is. How am I going to change it?
Yeah.
Behavior is not easy to change, as you know, as a social worker. It's not easy to change.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that. It gives me a chance to speak to this thing, which I think is a really big part of why I think improv is such a core part of my work. What improv does is it gives us the opportunity to not only not know what's going to happen, like it gives us a way to practice doing stuff in the unknown. It gives us a way to practice navigating unknown territory with mastery. And what that ends up doing is that it brings the present moment, because I have to accept the present moment because that's what is right now. It's like it's accepting. It's like saying that part of yourself that you feel like wants to change. But then there's the next moment. And so if we can be fully present in the now moment and accept it fully, regardless of how flawed I am, and by God, I am the most flawed person I know. If I can accept, like you're saying, if I can accept that fully and love myself and find ways to love myself and forgive myself fully in this present moment, then that gives me space to make a decision about the direction I want to go in now. Like, what do I want to do next? And I can literally just take whatever that shit was and I can go, I'm done with that. I want to do this now. And it gives us a way to practice movement so that we can genuinely recreate our future in the way that we would most want to.
I love that. The program that we've created for the kids, we've got over 2,500 exercises for kids from 3 months all the way up to 18 years. And we're putting together a curriculum for 40 schools in 40 countries around the world. We got some major funding coming in now.
Cool.
And creativity is like a key part. So I've thought about it a lot. It's interesting with creativity. There's a whole component that especially got into, and this is kind of what opened it up, within sacred geometry. When you study all the sacred geometry there is, like even just golden mean's got every pattern in the universe in it, right? I'm not sorry, not golden mean, the flower of life. The flower of life's got all the different geometries in that one image. Golden mean does a lot of them. But it's like when you learn, and in my voice class, when we do voice healing, I say, okay, we're going to teach you these techniques that you can do with everything you can do with the voice and what it does. But then get out of the way and let spirit come through. So it's totally creative, right? And so there's often, even with the piano, there's a tech just to get those fingers to move, right? There's a little bit of tech. Most instruments, other than like crystal bowls, it's like, okay, just do it, right? There's like, a little bit of tech to not much, right? Because we're not worrying about notes and chords now, which is thank goodness, right? And so then, but if you were to learn music theory in detail and not get stuck in it, then spirit has more ways to move through you. Or it's just like if you learn overtone singing, right? Now spirit has another way to move through your voice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any
Yeah.
thoughts?
And thanks for bringing that up. There's a couple of things I'd like to mention about that. And one is that I'm not teaching. I mean, it's part of it, but I'm not teaching just playing chromatically. I am teaching in play. I have a way to help people learn how to play in any of the 12 keys that I can show you in like an hour. So you remember in that video, that woman who was playing that piece that you listened to for 30 or 40 seconds.
Uh-huh.
She has only taken that 1 hour class from me, and
Wow.
before that, she had never played the piano before. And so it gave her enough information to be able to know which notes to play in any key. And so then you're literally, you're playing diatonically.
Diatonically is all the white notes.
No, you're just playing in any of the 12 keys.
Uh-huh.
So let me show you. Da 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 da. Okay. So like right now, I'm just going to play in the key of what I call 4 flats. So I'm not really thinking in terms of typical music theory. I'm just thinking of playing the 7 notes in that particular key. And then, and as long as I know which 7 notes to play in any key, which is actually the way that I teach it, it's really crazy easy to learn. You can learn it in an hour, and you can learn and to play in all 12 keys. And then once you know that, then you can just start focusing on the sound again.
Love that.
And you don't have to worry about sour notes, because any of those 7 notes are going to be. Even that right there is it's a little bit gnarly because it's a minor second, but it's still kind of cool, So then you can just start playing and enjoying what you're playing and enjoying what you're hearing. And it makes all the difference. As far as I know, I'm the only person on the planet that teaches. I've never heard this particular idea before. It came to me about 10 years ago, and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe that this isn't how people have been teaching the piano for the last 400 years. But I guess I'm just the one that it got to come through, so kind of fun.
Wow. I always play the white keys. And if I need another key, I just transpose the synthesizer.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I would love is to show this to you and to other people who are watching this. So one of the things that I thought that I might do in terms of like just giving people a chance to try next step is to give them a way to just learn that particular piece, to just do a little mini session on that particular 1 hour session thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool. Okay, so I got a couple other things that are interesting. So, so when you say now, what is happening now is the first of the 3 questions, right?
Yeah.
So when I think of that, and I talk about this in one of my classes, is what is happening now is either judgment, right, where you're judging, and then it's not now anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's either good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not good or bad, what it is, it's a frequency, a timbre, combination of frequencies. It's a musical interval or chord. It's a flow. And it's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, because that's where we get to really, what I mentioned earlier about when I was mentioning about listening carefully, and that like the other 3, it's easier said than done. It's because of that. Um, and and
Right.
so and so as soon as I listen to something, I do a meditation in my first session with clients, and I just call it a listening meditation, and we'll get into it, and I'll just encourage people to listen to what's happening in their local environment, and just pay attention to the sounds and notice the sounds that are happening, and so then it's like, okay, so now do this without labeling where you think the sound is coming from, and notice how kind of impossible that is. It's like it's kind of impossible to hear a dog barking and not just immediately say that's a dog.
Hmm.
But it's really helpful to notice the difference, to just notice that you are contributing to your experience of sound because of your interpretation of it.
It's so interesting. I teach in my recording classes that really interesting technique because I learned a long time ago that there's sometimes I become the music, and it probably started when I was smoking pot in high school and listening to headphones, right?
Yeah,
And it's all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm like the music, I'm gone,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And but you can do that without drugs, right? Where
yeah,
you get into the moment and do exactly what you said, where you're what's happening in this moment. And I actually start by having people hear things as frequencies as opposed to instruments,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then notice the frequencies in your body and let them come in, let them come in, and then you can go into that state of uh of just oneness. Okay, so the second question now uh is, who am I? Now that's an interesting question because a lot of people identify with their emotions, which is a roller coaster, or their mind, which can be a mess, or their body, which also can be a mess, good or can be cool, um, instead of their soul, their spirit, or their point of awareness, which is the actual witness that's watching it all,
mm-hmm,
which most spiritual teachers say that's who we are, is our point of awareness,
mm-hmm.
right? Or some people say, I'm just universal love, right?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. I have so much to say about this particular
Oh,
thing.
oh, good.
And I do think it's a really, really, really good, an interesting question. And it's just, I think the thing that I'd like to say about that in this moment is that the difference between there's a difference between asking the question, who am I, and asking the question, who am I now? Like,
Oh,
who am I
okay.
right now?
Okay.
It's it's like it's like, yes, ultimately I am some extension of universal love energy. Yes, probably. I don't usually experience myself that way. Sometimes I experience myself as an aging old dude. Sometimes I experience myself as a piano player. Sometimes I experience myself as whatever. And that is what I actually think, I was thinking about this a while back. Talk about truth. It seems to me that the way that we can access universal, eternal truth that we can rely on, that will never let us down, is always through the present moment. Like that is the way through, is to be present, 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 present. And that is, as long as we're mortal and as long as we're in these bodies, we'll have an incomplete experience of that to some degree. But we can, like you're saying, we can tap it. We can have these moments where that's the experience that we're having. And I also think that it can be really helpful and valuable to kind of love the times when we're having just a more mundane kind of experience, like I'm enjoying having a conversation with you,
Right.
and just let that be the gift.
So we are our experience in the moment,
Yeah,
mostly. I
yeah.
love that. Okay, I've got two things. I remembered what I wanted to talk about.
Oh,
This is
okay.
actually a big one that you mentioned about listening, because I actually have an exercise for the kids where we go through five, I don't even remember them right now, but five different ways to listen. Just listen and be present without anything. Listen for the feeling, that it's evoking. Listen for the information. I mean, there's all these different levels of listening that we do,
Yeah.
and people often bounce around between them, and there's so it's really interesting because I don't think when people say listen, it doesn't really mean much to people because we don't even I don't I think what are people even saying when you say listen?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What do
What
you
does that
think?
even mean?
Yeah, what is it? It's I mean, all I can think is just being present, but being present, it's like you can be hearing a piano sound, you can be hearing the frequencies, you can be hearing the notes, you can be hearing hearing the progression, melodic progression, you can be just, oh, this is one thing. Oh my God, I'm so glad I just thought of this. This is
Oh,
really
good.
cool. I just we'll just throw this in the middle of this little piece. So, I think of the essence of music is to create flow, right? Because flow, smooth flow through the body, physically, mentally, emotionally, every aspect, without blockages, is the definition of health.
Hmm.
Smooth flow without blockages. And music is nothing better than to create flow in the body. But, so I thought of like the ultimate flow is like a river, right? I mean, it hits a rock, it doesn't go, shit, that rock sucks. It just goes around it perfectly smoothly in a beautiful little wave, actually. And so I thought, okay, a river is like infinite notes. And then I started thinking of like, okay, how does music correlate to a river? Because nature is just a musical flows everywhere. And our body, our blood, all of our 11 systems are musical flows, 11 medical systems. They're all got to be flowing, right? And then I realized music is almost digital in that there's dum ba da ba da ba ba. But what we create is we create perfect flow in our system.
Hmm.
It triggers that perfect flow, even though it's actually one note after another. It's really kind of like a bad digital system in a way. I mean, that's weird to say it that way. But you see what I'm saying? It's because that smooth flow of blood going through our body, our electricity going through our nervous system, or source going through our whole system is infinite note flow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love that, David. And what I'm thinking of as you're saying that is that it steps me into this idea that everything. This is another thing that I often will say in my first session with people is just from a standpoint of my perspective on all this. I think this is my thinking, but I think the way I see it is that the whole universe is the music.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Capital T, capital M. I learned the other day when I put two fingers up, the balloons come up. So,
Oh, that's hilarious.
but so for me, like the ideal is for me to be so open to whatever the universe is whatever is running through my system right now, is to be able to just express that as with as much presence and consciousness as possible, so that I become this literal instrument of the music that is coming through me.
It's
Uh,
interesting because when you're in the flow, you don't perceive the flow, you're in the moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And since we perceive time in the way that we do, it's like the best of the best is to be present, 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 present.
It's
And
interesting. I was talking. I've one of our instructors is a music theory teacher, and I was talking about how really, because he's a serious jazz player, how when you're really in the flow, you're not only in the moment, you're kind of like seeing the past and the future in the moment also, because you know what happened, you know where you're. I mean, you're kind of seeing the past and potential futures all at once while you're in the moment playing there,
mm-hmm.
which is really a high state of consciousness. It's like seeing the trees in the forest at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get to do that, don't we? I think that's one of the things that music and sound is a bridge to that. It's a way to that. You know what I mentioned earlier about how do we get from where we are to where we most want to be? We got to start with where we are. And so if we can be where we are, then we can look to where we want to go and take a step and then enjoy that step. It's like, oh, and we can just gradually, like step by step, move in a direction that we want to go in, and then enjoy all of that, all of those steps.
I love it. Enjoy. It's really enjoy is flow. That's it.
Yeah,
It's really the deal.
yeah.
Okay, I got a question for you. You don't have to do it, but let me see if a request.
All
I got
right.
a song request.
Okay.
Can you play this a song of who you are?
Oh my gosh. I you'll understand why I'm laughing. What I'm going to do, what I will do is I will start with who I am now,
Hmm.
and then I will move into a sort of a story song about who I am, and then I'll kind of end with who I am whenever that moment happens. How's that?
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Cool. I love it.
You're going to start cracking up when you hear when you hear this. Let's see here.
I just love that.
Oh, thanks.
Uh, it's just wonderful. Guys,
Thank you.
so want to take your class. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. Cool.
So,
Okay.
so, uh, so that you get why I started laughing when you said that when you asked that question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The reason that I started getting into piano for real about 24 years ago was because I heard some guy playing All the Things You Are and just tearing it up, and I was like, I want to know what it feels like to play All the Things You Are like that before I die. I had that thought, and that's what started me on this path. So I love that
Beautiful.
you
I
asked
love
that
it.
question.
I love it. Okay. Anything else you want to share before we end?
Uh, I've just really enjoyed this conversation, David. It's been really fun, and I love
Me
that you're
too.
doing what you're doing. I love that you're making the difference in the world through all this beautiful, heartful sound making and giving people the tools to do that with. And it's just a really, really powerful way to make a wonderful difference in this world. So, and I guess what I can do is there'll be a link, I guess, somewhere around here that will send people to an opportunity to take this little class on how to play in any key, and that can be a way for people to just find out a little bit more.
Yeah, they can find it on the conference website.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, what a pleasure. Thank you.
You're so welcome, David. Thank you. This is great.
Take care.
You too.